Okay, voxels are volumetric pixels, essentially. And 2D sprites are a series of pixels that make up a two-dimensional image. So let's do some pixel-inspired 2D, three-dimensional voxel art. Cool. It is hard not to think of Minecraft when discussing voxels, but they aren't really the same thing. Minecraft uses geometric cubes that has the texture painted and mapped onto the geometry, whereas voxels are typically represented as kind of volumetric cubes that can store many properties within it, like a base color, dynamic textures, or how they interact to their neighboring volumes. And this is what makes voxels so cool, and also what makes Enshrouded so great. Now, Enshrouded is definitely not the first voxel-based game out there, and scrubbing through YouTube, you can see just how many beautiful and amazing examples exist. And I'm not great at keeping my pulse on all the new things that are coming out, but when Enshrouded crossed my path and presented itself as a survival multiplayer game that utilizes voxels for building and terrain manipulation, I quickly became a little obsessed. I really do love the survival multiplayer genre. That's even how I started this channel, if you were to go way back. And being a newer student of pixel art, I immediately wanted to oversimplify the amazing, intricate opportunities that you have in Enshrouded to build crazy cool three-dimensional things, and I just wanted to build some flat art with it. And I thought potentially, at least for this particular video, doing pixel art in Enshrouded could be a fun way to dust off the cobwebs, because it has been a minute since I've posted. And I definitely underestimated how complicated this ended up becoming. But let's go through the process. I began by building the smaller NES Mario sprite inside our private server. And it turned out really good. I was really impressed by it because in my head, I was just using voxels to create pixels. But what was happening is all this interesting layer and texturing was being added onto this two-dimensional sprite and created some unique shapes. I experimented with a couple different building blocks. I ended up going with these, which made it just sound like a fun, I don't know, found mosaic sculpture. I really liked it. It kind of looks old and ancient and interesting. Maybe I'll find better words for it later. But this did inspire a bigger build. So there are two people that I found in Discord. I'll post a link to these messages below. But Crazy Loon has a world file that you can download. It provides you with a bunch of resources, which is great for builders. And then in addition to that, or alternatively, Mr. Beard hosts a server where you can go and just kind of shop around for resources, and it refreshes every hour. So both these places are great for finding resources if you're just trying to do big creative mode style building. So inside Crazy Loon's server, I went ahead and scattered out a bunch of areas, trying to find a good spot to build because there's no creative mode. So I needed a good direct sunlight, and I needed a lot of clear and open space. And for those who don't know, in order to build in Enshrouded, you have to build within the perimeters of a flame altar, which is roughly 160 by 160 meters, with the flame altar in the center. And what I wanted to build is 256 by 240 pixels. So I assumed I would need multiple of these flame altars stacked and layered, but did a lot of building tests, and I was getting disappearing pillars because I was building too high. And then it occurred to me that the actual block size I'm building with, I think, is more or less half a meter, because you can fit 320 of them in a row, opposed to the 160. So this allowed for a lot more flexibility because I only really needed one flame altar, and I ended up using two just to give us a little wiggle room. So once I kind of figured everything out, I went ahead and built my perimeter out of a metal block. And then I cracked open Aseprite and went to this writer's resource to download some assets from Super Mario Bros. To kind of create a screenshot that I wanted to make out of pixel art. I played around with the first level a little bit to try to find a good frame, and I ended up finding something that I particularly liked. I made a couple of tweaks just to help with some tangents or allowing certain things to read, but I really wanted a coin, and I wanted a Goomba, and I wanted to do the bigger version of Mario because I've already done the smaller version. And once all these pieces are done, the only last thing I really have to do is just to find the color palette, and the Enshrouded blocks have a very limited color palette. In fact, there's only one blue and one green, so I had to make some creative changes, but I think I found a solution that worked out really well. And in fact, the blue that I ended up using for the sky is the luminescent block, which I thought was going to be a little too bright and overexposed, but with direct sunlight, it kind of gets muted a little bit. In addition to that, in the nighttime, it has a really cool effect on the final result. And I'll be posting those screenshots towards the end of the video if you want to jump to see those. But once the color palette is decided and the building perimeter set up, I just went about building. It's slightly difficult showing the building process through this over-the-shoulder sped up perspective. Because the camera was whipping around so much, it became a bit disorienting. but I felt there were a few things that were worth highlighting, so I'll cut around a little bit while showing the process as I build this giant Mario mural. As I mentioned earlier in the video, one really interesting part about building with voxels and Enshrouded is just seeing how the different brick types merge and create unique and interesting shapes. And as an example, in this particular portion of the build, I'm using 3 different types of blocks: a red brick, a creamed color stone, and a darker stone for the outlines. And when these blocks are used on their own, you can see more well-defined edges, and when they get used with more of the same type of block, a more uniform and larger pattern is formed. And when mixing and mingling the 3 different types together, you kind of get a little bit of this and a little bit of that, resulting in sometimes a pretty surprising surface texture on the entire wall. But it was pretty cool. And definitely the most difficult and challenging part about this building exercise was laying down the brickwork for the ground plane. It's a more intricate designed pattern and very, very, very repetitive. So a lot of my time was just spent staring, counting, and not blinking as I went grid by grid building this. And the strategy for how I broke this down in order to build it is I just oriented the grid in Aseprite for this template to be 32 by 32 pixels, and I would build each chunk at a time. It was kind of rewarding because I would fill in a chunk as I finished it, which I think helped motivate me because it got so monotonous at some points. I was just excited to fill in the next square. I definitely lost track of how many times I fell during this building process, but unfortunately we have the glider, so it makes the landing easy. It's just a lot of teleporting back and forth. And as I completed each minor or major portion of this build, I went back to my viewing platform that I built so I could take a screenshot of the progress. And although the big reveal is the front of the mural, at the very end I will show you the backside of the mural because I found the amount of scaffolding I used to build this pretty impressive. And that's about it. And that's it, all done. That was quite a long process. I'm very happy with the result. I think it turned out really nice. I've been thinking about making pixel art with intricate shaped voxels for a while now, so this definitely was a fun thing to accomplish. And here are a couple of close-ups, as some of the detail gets a bit swimmy this far away. I went ahead and chose the metal blocks to represent the coin and the question mark, and it's fun seeing how these different materials react to the sunlight. For the Goomba, there is a block called mycelium, which felt very appropriate and was just the right color of beige. And then for the title, I went ahead and gave the screenshot 1360 points, which is the current subscriber count on the channel. So thanks to all of you for subscribing. I really do appreciate it. And then here's Mario. I think just like the smaller Mario that I did earlier, it is fun seeing all the shapes and texture detail. I'm pretty pleased with it. And here's a slightly wider shot showing Mario and the Goomba together. As I mentioned earlier, the luminescent blocks have a fun effect during the nighttime, where it creates like a really interesting rim light on all of the shapes. There's something kind of neon about it that I really enjoyed. And here's the final image once more. And that covers it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Ciao. Oh, I forgot to show you the scaffolding behind the mural. I feel like this is a pretty impressive reveal, but the scaffolding felt more intimidating when I was actually jumping from ladder to ladder to ladder. I feel like maybe because I was always mostly looking up, so maybe down here it feels cooler. But what's also interesting is you can actually see this build all the way from the main base, but due to the LOD, it's more or less just one chonky block, but still pretty cool.